But speaking of college athletics, I mentioned it earlier. We I saw a tweet today. This tweet is from the official College Game Day Twitter themselves, and they announced where they're going for their first College Game Day on Saturday, September 2nd. This is from the College Game Day Twitter account themselves. They are going to Charlotte, North Carolina. They are coming to what they call the Queen City. Those of you that live in Cincinnati or close to Cincinnati would disagree that Charlotte's the Queen City, but not the point. They're going to Charlotte, North Carolina, and they will be there for the neutral side battle between North Carolina and South Carolina for the Duke Mayo's Classic. Now, this is not to see which winning head coach gets dunked with Mayo. No, kids. That is for the Duke's Mayo Bowl game, but that has nothing to do with the Duke's Mayo Classic, if that makes any sense. So, and some of the replies, I was always curious with what the replies say whenever that type of announcement is made. And I should have been a genie. I should have been one of those mind readers. I already know what was going to happen because they went right to it. How come Florida State and LSU, how was that not a college game day? How was that not warranted? Some of them said. Well, so for those of you that pay attention, college game day is usually on Saturday. And that neutral site game is not on a Saturday. That is actually on a Sunday night. That is on, what was it? We'll see here. September 3rd. That is on September 3rd. So September 2nd is the North Carolina and South Carolina game. And even though maybe not the same caliber team that Florida State and LSU is, still going to be a really good game. You first and foremost, you have a game that's going to be somewhat of a rivalry, some state pride there between North Carolina and South Carolina. Neutral site game there at the Carolina Panthers football stadium. You got that going as well. And then you also have two teams that played some very good football last year, but maybe going in different directions. So how things go about this season, we might get some more clarity about North Carolina and South Carolina. So North Carolina, very good season last year. They ended up going 9-5. They were 9-1 going into the November 19th game against Georgia Tech. But then starting with that Georgia Tech game, they end up losing their final 4 games of the season, losing to Georgia Tech, losing to NC State in overtime. Then they lose to Clemson in the ACC championship before finally losing to Oregon in the Holiday Bowl to those Oregon Ducks, a 1-point loss. 3 of those 4 games, by the way, were 1-possession losses, by the way. So we know how good Drake May is. Drake May is someone that will very well see in the NFL, likely a first-round pick. But the question with North Carolina is going to be, how good is that supporting cast for Drake May? How's that going to be? Because Drake May, not only was we know him as that passer, but he also led the team in rushing yards last season. So I'm looking to see how that supporting cast for North Carolina is, and they'll have a good test early on as they'll take on a South Carolina team from the SEC, 8-5, but they round off some really good wins towards the end of the year. They beat Tennessee, they beat Clemson, and they played Notre Dame pretty well on top of that. So South Carolina and North Carolina, they both finished in the top 25, all things considered. And when the initial preseason polls come out, I do expect both these teams to be in the top 25 and generally should be a good game to watch. So I know some of you guys might be disappointed for Florida State and LSU, and I'm certainly going to be watching that Florida State and LSU game as well. But South Carolina and North Carolina, that's going to be a fun game to watch. And shoot, depending on what happens, Spencer Radler, he might mess around and be an NFL quarterback soon, depending on what happens this season. You really never know, and that's the beautiful thing about college football.